That guy. You can see we've got pretty decent tile coverage for what it is. It's not a perfect fit. It matches the contour of this particular asset reasonably well along here, but not perfect. And then over here you can see it's anything but perfect with matching of this particular shape. One, because as I mentioned in the previous episode, it's very difficult to get the assets right when you have to edit the asset, save it, load into the game, place it, figure out what's wrong, what's working, what's not, go back into the asset editor. It's a fairly time-consuming. Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Building Big with City Skylines, episode 57. I'm Enigmaeus, and today we're taking a look at our last road layout asset for a little while at least for our isolated districts, and then we're going to take a look at some of the changes that we've made to the city as a whole in support of our goal of having fully contained, self-contained little districts that serve a purpose and are only connected to the rest of the city and the outside world via cargo train. You can see we've got quite a busy train network set up now. They don't necessarily always stop at our city, but you can see them driving by at least. I see one go each stop in there. Now the first thing we're going to look at is this last asset. And much like the asset from the last episode, this guy here, it's not a perfect match for the contours of the assets that we might be most likely to use them with. Like, for example, this contour here is a fairly reasonable match for this one here, but you don't have to look too hard to realize it's by no means perfect. Even less so with this contour here matching with this here. And the reason, as I mentioned in the last episode, is it's very laborious and time-consuming to set up the asset, save it, load into your game proper like this, place the asset, evaluate what needs to be changed, go back into the asset editor, do all those things. Just the back and the forth gets a little bit tedious after a while. So at some point I was more than willing to settle for good enough in this case. If someone wanted to do better assets for themselves, by all means they would be welcome to do so, but as far as the ones I'm making, this is perfect for my particular needs. Now the way this is set up, we'll just zoom out a little bit now, is that we would have another one of these kind of over here if we were wanting to continue this in like a full circle all the way around, which we can't obviously because we've got rails this particular side and we've got Great Big River this side. But if we were to pretend that that's what we wanted to do, shut up Tweety, we would have another one of these assets over here like that, another one of these assets over here, and then they would all be fitting together the same as these ones are. And then we would have another one of these assets kind of over here. And then eventually, if we wanted to do yet another ring of assets around, we would take one of these assets and we would put it up here, where it would kind of follow things like that. And then another one of these up here. And by the time you finish that ring, you would have to make new assets, because even though they aren't perfect now, they'd be amazingly not perfect if you were to try and go any larger. And at that point, also a person might have to question why you're using these assets to build something so large in the first place. There's nothing wrong with it, but for our purposes and the reason why these assets were made, which was the whole idea of the isolated districts, maybe getting a little bit too large anyways. Because by then you're looking at friggin' huge just for a single district to do a single thing. That's the line of thinking anyways. Both of these assets are now available to download on the Steam Workshop. The links will be in the information box below this video. If you wanted to download these guys, use them, edit them, use them as a reference, whatever you want to do with them, feel free. The links are there. So now we can look at what we've done in the city at large to try and support what we're trying to do here. Now you can see here, this has actually gotten way better. Look at this. This used to be completely abandoned. This whole industrial area was entirely abandoned because they were saying that they didn't have any goods with which to make the things that they wanted to make. Now we've got one abandoned here. We'll get to this in a minute. We've got another abandoned here, another abandoned here. We've got these two saying that they have no goods, and then we've got this guy over here saying he has no workers. Another no workers here. Compared to what it was, this is a massive improvement, and I didn't actually directly change anything that was going on here. What I did do is I went around the entire city, I disabled the university, I didn't touch any of the high schools, and I disabled the elementary schools so that we can see, if we look at the gauge here, the capacity is now 1,500. Eligible is considerably more than that, and the reason why I did that is because we were still having issues with people being overeducated in these districts, even though, with the exception of this one, for example, in this district and this district here, we completely removed the elementary schools. Look at, even now, look at this. There's no elementary school anywhere in this district, and these blue houses are basically indicating that these houses have access to elementary school education for the residents, and the only place that that education could be coming from is over here in the city proper, which is not ideal. This is kind of contrary to what we were aiming for. So I specifically went out of my way to disable enough elementary schools at least to get a start at getting some of these houses to turn red. And if you sit and watch long enough and you don't fall asleep, every once in a while you'll see a house turn red. It's a slow process, and the key here is that these houses occasionally turn red, which means these people are not allowed to send their kids to school. There's no room for them or whatever. But these ones, these high rises, are not. And I think it has something to do with the proximity. These guys are farther away from any of these schools than these people here. So these guys are the ones who are disallowed to participate before these ones. You see over here, it's saying that all of these houses have access to elementary school education, and most of the houses here as well. And this is, again, another one of those districts that's had no elementary school whatsoever for quite some time, but still the people are either educated or in the process of being educated. And we wanted to kind of dial that back a little bit. And that's the only change that I made that led to this district here kind of coming alive a little bit. And you can see it's going through another one of those valleys, right? We saw it a few minutes ago at a peak where it was doing quite well, and now it's kind of gone into one of the valleys where it's doing a little bit worse, and then it'll come back. But again, referencing how it was previously, where the entire industrial section of the district was abandoned, it's kind of a big deal. You can see we've got some now saying that they don't have enough goods. We've got some more extra ones abandoned, not enough workers. So we're not at a balanced position with this district yet, but we're moving closer to it. We've really done a good job of taking care of the whole thing, not having enough workers, not having enough whatever. Abandoned farm. You can see this farm here, it was just abandoned. And if we look, not enough workers. Not enough workers. So we've got one farm out of all of these that was abandoned due to a lack of workers. All the rest are up and running just fine. Now we're going to move before it has a chance to make me a liar again. But you get the idea. We are definitely making progress. It's not fast, and that's okay, because that's what makes it an interesting experiment, is that we get to play around with things and take our time and then just kind of observe and see what's going on and make some changes and then continue to observe. Down here, again, a little bit less in the prosperous department, but not bad. Still, we've got this industrial area with the forestry. This is all forestry stuff, so we've got tree farms and we've got industry that uses wood products, that likes to import a lot of the wood that it uses. And it's doing a lot better than it was. It used to be that this district was largely abandoned, and again, it was a lack of workers. And of course, this is the one that we've been testing our assets on, and we've added a ton of residential to support what's going on in this industrial district. I'm hoping that we will reach a point through the changes that we've made to the school system where we can have less residential while still providing the same number of workers, keeping the industrial happy, keeping it, up and running with enough people to do the job, so that we can either repurpose a lot of the space that we're using now for residential to keep them going, or remove it altogether and just kind of leave it sitting there until we come around later on at some point with other parts of the city and use it up. So it's nice to see progress being made. It would be at this far along, if we were still coming along and finding like these huge problems where things were getting worse or they were stubbornly staying the same, it would be around the point where we would have to say maybe this is not going to be a viable kind of project to continue. But the fact that we are seeing progress in every area suggests to me that it's worth continuing, and at least we can kind of see, maybe get a better view of how things work, maybe get a better idea of how things work. or find out that still, no matter what we do, we can only get it almost without ever getting it perfect. So we're going to continue with the experiment. Next episode, we're going to focus probably a little bit more on fine-tuning and trying to get rid of these last few abandoned buildings and worker shortages. It might involve another reset, so to speak, of the residential areas. Get rid of these educated people and let less educated people rebuild in their stead. And then we'll see from there where we end up and where we want to go. We still got lots of space. We got tons and tons of space. Our population is actually up quite significantly, and again, owing in large part due to the amount of residential space that we've been zoning. But it previously was stagnant for quite some time, and it was because we would get some people in, and then they would not have work, and then they would leave, and then they would come in, and they would not have work, and they would leave, and crazy crybabies. Look at all this, making a liar out of me again. See, we saw, at least I could show you that there are times when this district is working. It doesn't always last. You can see this is not enough customers, not enough goods. This one's alternating between not enough goods and not enough customers. Abandoned, not enough raw materials, and abandoned. So I mean, this district is still going through a bit of a tough time. Some growing pains, a little bit of shock and awe, replaced by all this happiness and prosperity that is replaced again by shock and awe. This is going to be sort of, I think, the real indicator of how well we're doing with the other places, is if we can get this thing up and running and happy and stable, then that'll mean we've finally succeeded with these ones here. So next episode, you'll probably see something going on here. You might see, like I say, a bit of a reset in the residential department, getting people back into the education level that we would like to see them in, and more discussion on what we're going to be doing for the fine-tuning. So if you want to be notified about that episode, as always, subscribe to my channel, or you can follow me on social media for notifications. Links for that are in the information box below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.